Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, pop culture, social media, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of dialogue, as well as videos throughout the week now as of 2022. We'll continue with that trend as we talked about in a previous video this week. I want to thank all of you guys from NewTek, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey, as well as Gab and Minds and other new tech sites like Gitter, for example. All of you guys, I appreciate all that you do. And of course, all of you here on YouTube, thank you for your continued support. All of what you guys do is greatly appreciated.
So we kick off 2022, and of course, as we near January 6th, the Democrats are not going to let an opportunity like this pass. So, of course, we are also entering into what would be the start of the midterm campaign season, as it were. So we started off with KQED. Writer Barton Gilman warns Trump's next coup has already begun. In his new article for The Atlantic, Trump's next coup has already begun, staff writer Barton Gilman looks at efforts to subvert democracy and upcoming elections, warning that government officials will be making a grievous mistake if they don't take these threats more seriously. Well, you got to break this down into simple, direct language, and that's what we do here on the BuzWeaver channel. Subvert democracy means that the Democrats were unable to convince enough people to vote for them, and therefore the other groups of people are too dumb to realize that they voted the wrong way. And of course, they're concerned about this, warning that government officials will be making a grievous mistake if they don't take these threats seriously. So in other words, the rise of popularity of President Trump, now that we have seen a year of Joe Biden, could be a big threat to the Democrats, and it is. And so, of course, they have to utilize the Capitol 6 mostly peaceful protest as a means to then, of course, scare people into voting for Democrats. However, this is going to fail miserably because they have failed across the board. But this isn't going to stop them from taking advantage of January the 6th. Now, as of this recording, it is Wednesday, January the 5th, but we'll get into that, or I went into details about this in my channel update. So if you guys haven't caught that, I'll put a link up here in the top right-hand corner, so be sure to check out the 2022 BuzWeaver channel update. So, from The Guardian, the risk of a coup in the next U.S. election is greater now than it was under Trump. Really? So, now that Trump isn't there to rile up people and get them enthusiastic and excited while he benefits the country, now they're concerned because they have seen what it's like without having President Trump as the president, because it is the establishment that is actually in control and Joe Biden is simply a surrogate. But it's interesting because this comes from The Guardian out of the UK. Only free and fair elections in which the loser abides by the results stand between each of us and life at the mercy of a despotic regime. Wow, that is quite an interesting outline. One we had no voice in choosing, and one that can freely violate all our rights. Well, it's interesting that it's coming from The Guardian because they don't vote here in our elections, but essentially what he's saying is basically what I was saying a moment ago when it comes to a threat to democracy. The Democrats are threatened when they aren't able to convince enough people to vote for them. And so it's a threat to democracy when they don't win. Because as we've said here, it's never been about the Constitution, Bill of Rights, or our laws. It's always about outcome. Think about how many times they went after President Trump and asked him, well, what are you going to do if you lose? What are you going to do if you lose? This was in 2016. Well, he didn't lose. And he came out, and it was Hillary Clinton who waited nearly, well, how many hours after it was announced that President Trump had won before she came out and then conceded. So it's interesting how they do this, but it's all in the framing, and people aren't fooled anymore. So we're going to see, of course, the continuation of this focus on the Capitol 6th, but what you won't see is what actually the conclusions were. Because remember what I said, it isn't about the Constitution, it isn't about the Bill of Rights, and it isn't about our laws. It's about outcomes. But when it also comes to the way the Democrats approach things, it isn't about the evidence. It isn't about what the facts are. It is the nature of the charge. It is the charge itself, the thing that they can knee-jerk react to, and not the actual facts and evidence, because then that kind of throws off their ability to exaggerate and sensationalize. As you can see here from Reuters, this was from August 20th, 2021. Exclusive. FBI finds scant evidence U.S. Capitol attack was coordinated. So despite the fact that the Democrats know this is coming from the FBI, not to mention the FBI, who conducted a 2.5-year investigation into Donald Trump's Russian collusion that never existed. So where's the focus on that? Where's the focus on the mainstream media like Jesse Smollett, who perpetrated an idea, a concept that did not exist, yet there's no particular coverage of that? Washington, August 20th, the FBI has found scant evidence that the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol was the result of an organized plot to overturn the presidential election results, according to 4 current and former law enforcement officials. So I'm not sure what exactly happened when it came to what the media is paying attention to, or the Democrats are paying attention to. Now, you guys are paying attention to this video, so clearly you guys are going to stay informed, because we're covering these facts right here that anyone with a computer, a cell phone, a laptop, a tablet, a computer, as I just said, can go and look up this information quite easily. It's not difficult. Now, I hearken back to my civics class with Raimundo Aviles from Cuba, a Cuban immigrant, my civics teacher. And he encouraged us to buy Newsweek magazine. So I often go back and look at Newsweek, and it reminds me of Raimundo Aviles from Cuba. It's time for a quiz, is what he would say often. So from Newsweek, we are on the way to a right-wing coup, the CIA director privately warned. And I love the intro to this. It was the president's first public appearance since the election, apart from his golf outings. Not to be confused with him having prop dogs run on the lawn there outside the White House and attack people, or get a new dog and go to some random beach somewhere with your wife and film things for the purposes of optics. And it's all contrived nonsense, because Joe Biden's approval is so terribly bad, and his vice president, Kamala Harris, is so terrible that the media has to make these particular created news things. And Newsweek used to be a rather decent publication, but of course we're in different times now from when I was in high school. But nonetheless, Newsweek, of course, is going to continue to jump on this particular bandwagon as well. This particular outline is from November of last year, just, a little over a couple months ago. So nonetheless, they're not going to let this go. The Capitol riot thing is going to just go. But it's important to also note that the Democrats could look up this information as well. Senate acquits Trump for inciting Capitol riot, even as bipartisan majority votes to convict. So there was no conviction. The president was not impeached, and he was acquitted of any involvement with what happened at the Capitol. As a matter of fact, he emphasized quite often, which also doesn't get covered, that everyone behaved peacefully. And he even came out a little bit later. Of course, the Democrats are always saying, well, it was much too late for him to come out and say anything. Well, he did come out and say something, so it doesn't matter whether it was too early, not enough time, should have been faster, this, that, and the other. They're always going to have a contradictory statement. From USA Today, Senate acquits Trump in historic second impeachment trial over Capitol riot. So the man was acquitted. There was no evidence found by the FBI in any involvement with Russian collusion. And each time they go after him, they fail. They're still going after him, by the way. They are still continuing. They have the whole trial there in New York going after him for fraud and other things. They just recently subpoenaed Ivanka and Donald Trump Jr. But of course, this is all for show. This is all for headlines. This is all to make Trump look as bad as possible. But we're no dummies. But I thought this was interesting, too, from the Republic Brief. Now, this may be a bit hyperbolic, but I just wanted to cover it for you. Feds finally admit secret DOJ commandos at January 6th troop protest with shoot-to-kill mission. Very interesting. What many people believe about January 6th has finally been revealed to be true. Yeah, we found out that there was no insurrection. There was no plot. there was no coordinated effort. Yes, that's what we found out. There were federal commandos at the Capitol on that day and before. The commandos had been granted shoot-to-kill authority, and the FBI was running the operation. Now, it's hard to say how involved this all was. Now, we had an individual who was part of the Trump I can't remember the gentleman's name. I've shown him before in previous videos, but he was basically saying that there were preparations to prepare for possible demonstrations and so forth. But in fact, the mayor of Washington, D.C. turned all of that down. In other words, they turned down the National Guard that President Trump was going to offer them at that time. And so, of course, later, afterwards, when the Democrats were in charge, that's when they put up all the fencing and put on their big show. So you might be wondering, well, why is all this actually happening? Well, because we're getting close to January 6th. And, of course, from the Daily Mail, Biden begins 2022 5 points behind Donald Trump with just 41% of voters backing him as the run-up to the midterms begin. Now, it is kind of early to talk about the actual general election, but the midterms are this year, and things are going to start to be happening that are going to be going very much against the Democrats. So this is why they have to say things like voter interference, threat to democracy. These sorts of key words, these sound bites, are what you're going to be hearing probably going into 2022 as we approach the midterms, and rigging the election and these sorts of things, because they're allowed to say it. If you're a conservative, if you're a moderate, if you're a Green Party, if you're an independent, if you're a classical liberal, you're not allowed to say these particular things on social media because you're not authorized. You're not an authorized individual, and you're also not a Democrat-approved individual who can make these statements that the Democrats are allowed to say. And we're seeing this continuation, of course, as you saw in my coverage of Dr. Robert Malone, who is the head, the guy, the expert when it comes to the mRNA that was introduced into the vaccine. He and his team were the ones who came up with the mRNA, and yet he's kicked off Twitter because he's not following the narrative. He's not part of the plan. So if you guys want to check out that video, of course, you can go to the main channel and see that. But that's what I have for you guys this Friday.
All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. I want to thank you guys for the likes, the shares, and the comments. Below this video, you can find the various social media links to the various social media sites that I belong to, where you can see my daily post. And, of course, if you're here on YouTube, that would be the channel icon appearing right there on the screen to subscribe. Along with selecting that, you can subscribe, of course, as well as notifications letting you know when there's content here on the channel, to include those video shorts that I do from time to time. Thank you guys for your continued support as we go into 2022, and I will see all of you guys right there behind that camera next week.